The curator, Rufus Bell, has teams traveling the world looking for curiosities. Currently, there are teams located in the Pacific Northwest in search of the elusive Bigfoot, in Mexico and Central America in search of the were-jaguar. Teams have been located in the United Kingdom for the gremlin. They've been researching gremlins in the United Kingdom since World War II when the RAF first discovered them. The Lamassu, which is a combination of a bull and a horse with 5 legs, known to be a palace guard and very ferocious. Located in the Middle East, perhaps our troops have found them in Iraq, in Afghanistan, Central Asia. The Vilja Fairy of Scandinavia. Teams are searching Central Asia and China for the phoenix. And in Japan, they're searching for the Roijin, the dragon dog. Third floor, please. I'm on the 3rd floor of the Higgins Armory. This is the Jousting Wing, where the pieces in the exhibit are dedicated to the sport of jousting. The color and the pageantry of a joust. A joust was a mock combat between 2 participants, and a tournament would have featured many participants. The point of the combat was to not kill the other man, but to merely knock him off his horse, showing the individual's skills in the art of combat, and of course, to impress his lord, or perhaps his favorite lady. This wall and this rail represents a safety feature called the tilt, and it was designed to keep the rider and the horses from colliding into each other at high speed. Face-to-face combat with broadswords. My friend on the left is wearing the plumage blue and yellow and a royal blue skirt hanging from his tunic. This battle probably represented this man's opportunity to earn the right to wear these colors. And these colors probably represent the royalty that this man is defending. Combination of the new and the old. This is a gun shield from approximately 1540. This would have given its user the opportunity to hide behind the armored piece and still fire his weapon through the shield. And when you think about it, this type of technology exists today with SWAT teams. When they go on a drug raid or a fugitive bust, the first man in has a huge shield, an armored glass window, and a place for him to stick his weapon out. Then, as now, important people like to be surrounded by ceremonial guards. Our viewers at home might recognize this uniform as that worn by the Swiss guards at Vatican City. This particular piece represents the armor and the uniform worn by the Papal Guard approximately 1570. This piece is called a wheel-lock holster pistol, affectionately known as a puffer, from approximately 1588. This piece has an interesting feature. Imagine a clockwork motor which the user would wind up, and then the clock would unwind, and the hammer would strike the flint, creating the spark which would fire the weapon. But you don't know when that's going to happen. Ornamentation can be seen down the length of the weapon, as much of the armor has. And of course, the ball in the end could be used as a club. And I have a funny feeling the club was used more than the gun. I can rent scuba gear. I can rent skis. I can rent time in a hot air balloon. I can rent paintball equipment, and I have. Back then, if you wanted to participate in the joust or the tournament, you could rent a suit of armor. One size fits all. It was adjustable. And this has been used because the neck plate is pockmarked and scratched. Could you imagine paying money getting into this contraption, climbing on a horse, and charging toward your opponent at 35 miles an hour? No thanks. We've made our way to the combat wing of the main hall. This end of the combat hall represents the point in history where firearms and suits of armor came together. And people that manufactured armor would have a proof mark that showed that the armor was bulletproof. And that's the word we use today, bulletproof armor. This piece bears the proof mark, and just below it, there's a gaping hole. And the staff likes to think that perhaps one day some youngsters took great-grandpa's suit of armor outside to test it out and successfully punctured it. No one really knows. Perhaps a modern firearm was used. This piece of armor is designed for a cavalryman carrying a firearm. It dates from about 1863, and it comes from France. That places it about the time of the U.S. Civil War. The Chastity Belt may be one of the world's oldest urban myths. This piece is possibly German, and we believe it was designed and built for commercial collectors. This piece represents a crusader, approximately 1200. He's wearing a cloth surcoat, a plate metal helmet, and under his coat he's wearing mail armor. And we were specific not to call it chainmail because it's not a term that would have been used. There were different types of armor. Combat armor had a smooth surface to deflect the blow of a weapon. Ceremonial armor tended to be more ornate and decorative, and on the far side, tournament armor, which had parts which were designed specifically for the tournament, where the participant would rest his lance and the shield to protect from being hit by the lance. This represents what it took to be a knight. All of these individual pieces made up a suit of armor, and you can understand why a knight would have the assistance of a page, because I can imagine being halfway through this process and not being able to reach your legs, or how would you put on the protective parts that cover your feet? And of course, on the far right, we have the gauntlet. A knight would toss the gauntlet down, and if it was picked up by his opponent, the challenge was accepted. He would throw down the gauntlet. The Samurai of Japan. These photographs are courtesy of the Smithsonian Institution. The samurai, bound by a rigid code of courage and tradition, was for centuries a central figure in the history and culture of Japan. In the photographs here, the figures wear the traditional elaborate armor and carry the weapons of the samurai. The standing samurai on the left crushes a vanquished foe in a traditional pose, but in a major departure from tradition, the standing figure is a woman, her white painted face serene, her hair hanging smoothly, uncovered by a helmet. Historical justification exists for this female samurai, as the wives of some medieval warlords were said to accompany their husbands into battle. The seated samurai faces the world with an expression of wary determination, crowned by an elaborate helmet that both protects him and intimidates potential enemies, and amply armed with the tools of his trade, 2 swords and a bow.